a finger down if when you were 15 years old, you went to your first high school party, but your mom thought you were sleeping over at your friend's house, and you were sleeping over at your friend's house. But she had just gotten her license a few weeks before, and she wanted to take you and your other friend to this party. And when you got to the party, you'd never drank before in your entire life, so you didn't really want to start that night. But your friend starts drinking, and you're like, oh my god, why are you drinking? You're the only one of us who has a license. You have to drive us home. How are you going to get home? And she's just like, oh, you have your permit. You can take us home. And you're just like, no, I've only driven 3 times in my entire life, and never at night. And I've only had my permit for a month. I can't drive us home. But your friend's already drunk, so you have to take them home. So you're sitting there mentally preparing yourself to be able to drive your friends home, even though you don't actually know how to drive. In the same time, you just got out of your first relationship ever, and your ex-boyfriend keeps texting you and calling you, being like, can we talk? And you're like, no, we can't talk. I'm dealing with something right now. But he thinks you're with another guy, but you're not with another guy. You're just dealing with something. And then your mom calls you, so you have to leave the party. You go outside to talk to her so that she can hear what's happening inside, and she's just freaking out and crying and screaming like, oh my god, does she know where I am? But she doesn't know where you are. It's much worse than that. Her coworker's daughter was murdered that night, and your body goes limp, and you're just like, oh my god, she was so nice, and she was only 18 years old, and now she's dead. And then the cops show up to the party because 2 guys get into a fight, and you have to drive you and your friends home, and some guy named Eric who's 20 years old gets in the back of the car and goes, can you take me home? And you leave him in a 7-Eleven parking lot.
My fiance's girl best friend has never liked me. We were all hanging out when Madison and Michael came out from a room with Madison crying. Michael looks at me and starts swearing and says I'm a raging bitch. Being hormonal and pregnant, I start crying and asking what's wrong. Proceeds to tell me about the text message I sent Madison. I told her I would not allow her near our child. I only sent this text message after the many racist texts she sent me about my child and I, me being biracial and all. Instead of hearing me out, Michael kicked me out of the house that we shared. On my way out, I felt a lower cramp in my abdomen, and I thought nothing of this because I was not due for another 3 weeks. When I flinched from the pain, Michael told me to stop faking. On my way to my mom's, I felt a gush of water and immediately turned the car around so that I would make it to the hospital. I tried calling Michael numerous times, but my call was quickly declined. I gave birth to our baby all by myself. I decided to do something and post all the hurtful messages Madison sent me on Facebook. Michael calls me and I inform him about my whereabouts, and he shows up 42 minutes later. He has tried to apologize multiple times, but I don't think I can forgive him. I went through the pain of pushing out an 8-pound baby all by myself because he chose to listen to his best friend over his fiancé. Should I forgive him?
My neighbors saw me naked. Story time. So sometimes a bitch sleeps naked because I get hot as fuck and because I heard a lot of good things about it. But anyways, this particular night, a bitch was naked and I woke up out of my slumber thirsty as fuck. Like I was literally feeling like SpongeBob when he went to Sandy's. But a bitch didn't put on clothes like a normal person because it was like 3 o'clock in the morning and no one was up. So I thought it would be a good idea to get out of bed and get water naked. So I'm getting my water and minding my own business. And my boyfriend's mom decides to come out of the room. And she knew I was in the kitchen, but she didn't know I was naked. And she starts walking towards me. And I was like, oh, hell no. I wasn't about to have my boyfriend's mom see me naked. You got me fucked up. So I thought it would be a good idea to run outside the back door, which leads to our backyard. But because I did that, my boyfriend's mom obviously thought it was suspicious. So she opens the back door and calls my name. So I run through the side of the house to get to the front of the garage door. My thought process at the time, I was going to put in the garage code to get into the house through the garage. But that didn't happen. Part 2 gonna be funny. My neighbors saw me naked. Story time. So I ran through the side of the house to get to the garage door that's in the front of the house. Keep in mind, I am bare booty cheeks naked, running outside just so my boyfriend's mom didn't see me naked. So I get to the garage door and I put in the code. The code wasn't working. And I'm just standing there freaking out like, no. I was standing right here, butt naked, trying to put in this code. And the fence is pretty low. So if my neighbors came out, they would definitely see me naked. Which is exactly what happened. It was 3 a.m. and my neighbors came out. I guess I was being super loud. So my neighbors came out and they're like, hey, who's over there? And I literally stood there frozen as fuck. Shook. I looked like a deer in headlight. After I was done freaking out, I thought it would be a good idea to book it. So I started running towards the front door. That was the dumbest decision ever because if I didn't do that, my neighbors probably wouldn't have seen me naked. Once I decided to make a run for it, the outside light came on because the light is triggered by a motion sensor. Then the light flashed on me and me and my neighbor just stared at each other like. Then I ran for the front door, which happened to be unlocked.
So one day I was on FaceTime with a boy who I thought was extremely cute, okay? And I had to go use the bathroom. But I wasn't going to tell him, hey, yo, I'm going to go take a fat ass shit. Like, no, I wasn't going to say that. So I was like, oh, I'm going to brush my teeth right now. Like, I'm going to put you on mute or whatever, right? I swear to God, I remember pushing the mute button, bitch. This is where it gets so good, bro. Like, it's... I'm out here vibing, doing my thing, you know, like, you just imagine. I was on the toilet. I was exploding. And then I hear him on the phone saying, damn, girl, you got so much gas. I was like, what? Okay. So after I'm done with, like, everything, washing my hands and shit, I check my phone and the mute button isn't on, which means he literally heard everything. I hung up. I've never talked to him since, bro. Like,
I was engaged to the love of my life, but my sister met up with me and begged me to break it off. She said I had to leave him because they were in love. and he was just too afraid to break up with me because he didn't want to hurt me or my family. When I confronted my fiance about my stepsister's accusations, he straight up denied it. He said she's been trying to come on to him for some time and he never mentioned it because he didn't want to ruin our relationship. He begged me not to believe her, and so we continue how we were. My stepsister grew resentful and made nasty comments about how I was forcing a man who didn't even love me to marry me because I had low self-esteem. A month later, I get a text from my sister. It's a video of her and my fiance sleeping together in my bed, and multiple screenshots of him telling her he loved her, how he wished she was the girl he was marrying, and how he hated that I wouldn't let them be together. I was devastated and angry, but decided to move in silence. I went home, grabbed all my stuff, removed all my money from my joint account, and moved in with my dad. After that, I sent all the screenshots to my family and his. He tried getting back with me multiple times, but I ended up blocking him when I found out he proposed to my sister with the same ring he gave me. I left it behind. Now they're getting married. I was extremely hurt to find out that my mom, step-siblings, and stepdad were attending the wedding. When I tried to express my feelings, they dismissed me and said it wasn't their fault that I got in the way of true love and made me out to be some sort of vindictive Disney villain. So I cut contact with them and I barely spoke to my mom in 5 years. Fast forward and I get engaged to my now husband. Due to COVID, we had a small ceremony and I also fell pregnant. My dad and stepmom have been amazing throughout all of this. She knitted a pair of booties and posted them on Facebook and tagged me about how she's excited for her grandbaby. My mom didn't know I was pregnant. Shortly after, I received a phone call to confirm. Since then, she's invited me and my husband over to her house multiple times. I've declined every single time for the obvious reason. My ex-fiance and stepsister live there. The next time my mom calls, I told her I didn't want them to keep inviting me over when they knew I would be forced to see my stepsister. I'm still hurt over what they did to me, and I told her I wasn't sure if I wanted people like them in my child's life. My mom was crying hysterically and kept saying I was being cruel and I couldn't deprive her of her first grandchild. She kept wailing about how I might be the only person in our family to even give her grandchildren. Am I wrong for trying to keep my mom out of my child's life?
If you can solve this riddle, you're a genius. There was this woman and she was a serial killer. She would take men on dates and then poison them and kill them. One day she goes on a date with you. Ooh, but she can't go through with it because she's so in love with you. Eventually, you two end up getting married and you buy a house together. When you buy the house, she claims the basement for her work and she says that you're not allowed to go down there. You say okay and you're happily married. But as time goes on, you get really curious and one day she leaves for work and you decide to go downstairs and see what's down there. When you go downstairs, it's pitch black and you reach around the walls to see if there's a light switch to turn on, but there isn't. As you're feeling around the room, there's a light bulb above you that is unscrewed a little bit. You screw it in a little bit more to turn on the light. Immediately, you see all the dead bodies that she's ever killed, and you're in shock as you're looking around for a while, but then you hear her car pull up in the driveway and she's home from work. You quickly unscrew the light bulb, run upstairs, and sit down. When she gets home, she goes downstairs to check on her dead bodies, and she immediately knew that you were in there. How did she know? Pause this video right now because I'm about to say the answer. It was because the light bulb was still hot.
There is a creepy lost episode of Barney that a father swears he caught his kids watching. One day he was looking at the TV guide when he saw that it said a lost episode of Barney was going to air at 7 p.m. He asked his kids if they wanted to watch and they said yes. They all sat down to watch it and the theme song started playing, but something wasn't right about it. It almost sounded like the song was being whispered. The episode started as it usually did, the kids holding the Barney doll that suddenly comes to life. But when Barney started talking, he sounded slightly weird. It sounded like two people were talking at once. His normal voice and one that sounded darker and scarier. And suddenly he said,
"Hi kids, today I'm going to talk to you about death."
So one of the kids asked him,
"Barney, what's death?"
He then chuckled and said,
"This is."
with his face suddenly turning angry, his teeth growing long, and then he eats the child. And then he proceeds to chase all the other children around trying to eat them throughout the rest of the episode. And then at the very end of the episode, he sang the I Love You song as if nothing happened. So, love.
I'm gonna tell you guys why I don't keep food in my room anymore. At least why I don't keep this particular food in my room anymore. So when I was a kid, my dad used to leave the country a lot. Every time he would come back, he'd always bring us some sort of goodie. It'd always be like bracelets, t-shirts, and candy. One time after a trip to, I think it was Dominican Republic, brought us back a bunch of lollipops. These are not normal lollipops like you're thinking in your head. These are these giant brown flat lollipops. Now, instead of eating them, me and my sister decided it would be best to hoard them. Yes, that's right, keep them in our room for as long as possible. For what purpose? I don't know. I think it was probably like, no, we can't eat them now. If something happens and we need them. Bruh. It's not every day that we got candy, apparently. So we kept them in our room. We kind of put them on display, up against the wall, right in between both of our beds, in this very room. This time I was about 6? My sister's about a year and a half older than me, so she was like 7, I guess. Now, these lollipops were given to both of us. They were displayed equally distanced between both of our beds, because they belonged to us both. I'm not really sure how this happened. But one night, me and my sister went to bed, but then my sister started tossing and turning. Calls out for my mom. My mom comes and she's like, what's wrong? Oh my God, I'm ready. This is part 2 of why I don't keep food in my room anymore. So my mom came into our room. She asked my sister, hey, what's wrong? She was like, oh, my body, I'm itchy. Mom's like, oh, maybe there's a mosquito. My sister's like, no, it's all over. She moves my sister out of the bed. Maybe it's your bed. She looks at her blanket. Oh my gosh, there's ants here. She shakes the blanket. Ants crawl everywhere. Under her pillow, ants. She lifts the mattress. Guys, her bed was infested with ants. Why? There was the faintest trail leading to our lollipops. My mom's like, hey, you get out of the bed. So I got out of bed. They checked my bed. It was completely clean. There was one measly ant. Literally one. One. My bed had no issues. Sister could not sleep there. So they ended up throwing our lollipops away and we were devastated. And my sister got a lot of unnecessary ant bites and I didn't get any. It's okay, because every time we go outside, I get swarmed with mosquitoes and she doesn't get bit at all.
My boyfriend and I went to his sister's wedding last Friday. They've always had a strained relationship, but overall it was a great wedding. We were enjoying the party when my boyfriend goes up to the DJ and asks for the microphone. I thought he was going to do a toast for his sister, but no. He asked me to come up to him and I was terrified. I remember thinking to myself, he is not going to do that. No way. I take a quick glance at the bride and she is furious. He then proceeds to propose to me at his sister's wedding. Everyone was cheering for us, but his sister just looked like she wanted to cry. I didn't know what else to do other than say yes. I was crying, but not happy crying. After that, I went up to his sister and was apologizing over and over. She was livid. I felt so sorry for her. I left early and my boyfriend came back to the hotel room at 2 a.m. hammered. And so I decided to confront him. At first he was like, babe, my whole family was there and it was the best time. Until he finally admitted that he did it because his sister had ruined his graduation by announcing her wedding. He used my proposal to get back at his sister. I left the morning after and haven't talked to him since. I don't know what to do. He won't stop calling, but I'm overwhelmed with emotions. My cousin in high school recently turned 18. She doesn't have a car and during her birthday weekend thought her parents were going to buy her one. When they didn't, she was pretty upset. I should note that I'm not very close with my cousin or the rest of my extended family for that matter. Anyways, my cousin texts me on the Friday before her birthday asking if she can take my car to the mall and then for an out-of-town road trip with her friends over the weekend. I tell her no. She begs and pleads with me, but I tell her no again. My car is for me to drive and for me only. If she wants her own car, she can save up and buy one. She calls me a bitch and says that I ruined her birthday and that she's embarrassed because her friends think she got a car for her birthday and she doesn't have one. I don't respond to her and think nothing of it. I wake up on Saturday morning to find that my car has been egg and TP'd. And since the weather was warm outside, the raw egg baked into my car along with the dried up toilet paper destroying the paint. I check my security cameras and I find my cousin and a bunch of her stupid friends vandalizing my car. I obviously press charges and my cousin is in legal trouble. Her and her parents are pissed off at me for pressing charges, saying she's just a kid and she's going through a phase. Saying things like I'm almost 30 and I don't remember what it was like at that age. Do you think I took it too far by pressing charges on her?
It's April 1st, 2005. I'm 5, chilling in my bedroom doing weird shit because that's what 5-year-olds do. My mom comes in. She's holding up her phone. She's like, Josie, there's a call for you. I'm 5. 5-year-olds don't get calls. So I was a little concerned. And I was like, Mommy, who is it? And she was like, oh, it's Blake. For context's sake, Blake was another 5-year-old from my kindergarten class who liked to play with me out on the playground. My 5-year-old self is like, why the fudge pops is Blake calling me? And my mom goes, Josie, he has something he wants to tell you. And I was like, what? And she says, he has a crush on you. And I was like, what? She's like, you have to take the phone. He's waiting. And I start freaking out. She's like, Josie, pick up the phone. He's waiting for you. I start sobbing. She's like, pick up the phone. And I'm like, she let that go on for about 10 minutes. And I'm just like, and she goes, April Fools.
Okay, so listen, I've been knowing that I'm a fast freaking talker and sometimes only other fast talkers can understand what I'm saying, which is kind of cool. It's like our own little secret language or whatever. But lately, I've just been sounding illiterate. Like, I will say a sentence, but forget like half the words. And I just assume that people know what I'm saying. Like, my friend was pulling up directions, didn't say a word to me, but I saw it. And in my head, I was like, oh, like, you don't have to pull that up. Like, I have the directions. But what came out of my mouth was, I have it. I have it? She was like, what are you saying? What do you have? I was like, oh, yeah, you can't read my mind. Like, you don't know what I'm saying. Like, we're not on that level. But, like, if you get to know me, and, like, my other friends are like, yeah, like, I kind of just, like, know what you're saying now. Like, I get that. But, like, that's why I'm terrible at first impressions. Because people are like, this bitch doesn't know what she's saying. Or it will actually get me in trouble with people because I'll say something and it sounds bitchy. But, I mean, like, I forgot a word or something. Like, I don't... Like, obviously, this is not a simulation because no one knows what the fuck I'm talking about.
Once you hear why he did this, it will change the way you look at strangers. In 2018, a woman was out for a walk in the blistering cold when she saw a teen girl coming towards her wearing just pajamas and oversized shoes. Turns out it was 13-year-old missing person Jamie Close, and boy did she have a terrifying story to tell. 87 days earlier, a man had broken into her home in the middle of the night, killed her parents, and then taken her prisoner. He brought her 70 miles away to his house where she was kept under a bed and largely forgotten about. She was just there for no apparent reason. When her captor left one night, she managed to escape, and that's when she ran into this woman on the road. Jamie's captor, 21-year-old Jake Patterson, was quickly found, and he immediately confessed. And this is why he did it. On his way to work one day, he stops behind a school bus, and he sees a girl get on. He doesn't know anything about her, and he decides, I'm going to kill her family, and I'm going to take her. He had no motive. He had no criminal history. This was truly random.
Why you should be really careful how you treat people, and also why you should stick up for people. When I was in 8th grade, I was really good friends with this kid named Damon. Me, him, and this other friend of mine, we were all at the same table. In English class, we would joke around, talk about the same TV shows and movies. We were the loudest group by far. But near the end of the school year, Damon ended up moving. And it really sucked, but we said goodbye to Damon, who I should tell you was this small, short, funny, wisecracking kid. Didn't matter what you threw at him, he was super witty. So we said goodbye to him, we all went to 9th grade. It was either the end of 9th grade or the middle of sophomore year that I saw Damon again. He had transferred back to our school, saw him at a pep rally, and I was sitting by myself because I despise pep rally. He was like, Josadak, do you remember me? I was like, oh my gosh, David? He was so much taller, face looked different, his voice was deeper. This was obviously a different kid, but really happy to see me. So we started talking, catching up. Then I started noticing that he was getting hit in the back of the head with tiny paper balls. He wasn't even flinching. I looked behind me to see 3 boys throwing paper balls at him. What? Dude, do you see what they're doing? Yeah, I'm used to it. What? This was not the same witty boy that I knew. Oh my god, I'm running out of time. Watch part 2 to see my part 2 of the kids throwing paper balls at my friend's story. So when I told Damon this was happening and he didn't seem to notice, I was very confused. The kid that I used to know would not let this fly. He instead kept his head down, insisted that it was okay, and said that he was used to it. Whatever happened between 8th grade and now completely changed the way that he viewed this behavior. I saw it as unacceptable. He thought it was okay. So instead of accepting that, I turned around and said, hey, what are we in 5th grade? The 3 boys looked at me from the top of the bleachers and said, whatever. 'Cause that's what high schoolers who act like 5th graders say. And then I said, stop it, it's not funny. They didn't stop. They laughed. But Damon thanked me. I didn't know who this kid was anymore. I can only assume that this type of stuff was happening to him often. That kids at his new school were treating him poorly. And because of that, he thought he was less than. I literally never saw Damon again after that day, but I hope that he knows that he can stand up for himself and that that behavior is not okay. Be careful how you treat people, it stays with them. And it can fundamentally change them. Bye.
If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. One night, a boy and his friend were on their way to a school dance when they saw a girl on the side of the road looking lost. They stopped the car and asked if she needed a ride, and she asked them to take her home. They said that they were going to a school dance and asked if she wanted to come too. She agreed. But these boys wouldn't know yet that this girl was not an average hitchhiker. So they all got in the car and the girl sat in the back seat. After a while, the girl would constantly say that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. They got to the dance and things were pretty normal, but what happened after would make the boys question reality. When the night was almost over, it was finally time to take the girl home. When they almost arrived, the girl told them where she lived but told them to drop her off close by so she can walk the rest of the way. So that's what they did. But after the girl walked away, the boy who let her borrow his jacket realized that he never asked for his jacket back. His friend said that they could just come back tomorrow for it. The next morning, they came back expecting to get the jacket and leave, but things were not so simple. They came up to the girl's house and knocked on the door, but they were shocked at what they discovered as soon as the door opened. Follow for part 2. If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. 2 boys picked up a girl on the side of the road while they were on their way to a school dance. In the car, she kept saying that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. But when the night ended and they were about to drop her off, the girl accidentally left with the jacket. So the boys said that they would just come back the next day to get it. But when they came back and knocked on her door, they discovered something that would make them question what is real and what isn't. An old woman opened the door and asked them who they were looking for. After talking to her for a while, it was revealed that the girl they found on the side of the road was her daughter. But the thing is, she had been dead for 12 years. She was killed in a car accident at the same street corner they first saw her. The old woman pointed to a cemetery down the road and said, "That's where we buried her." The boys didn't believe her at first. They'd spent the whole night with this girl, so they knew that she had to be real. But they went to the cemetery and saw the boy's jacket draped over a gravestone. And on the gravestone was the girl's name and the date of her death, exactly 12 years ago to the day.
Why you should always check your pockets, or why I always check my pockets. You never know where you're gonna find. I was in 9th grade. I got kicked out of my Spanish class. I already did a story time on that. I got sent to the guidance counselor and they put me in culinary class. Freshmen typically aren't allowed to take culinary. It's typically reserved for upperclassmen. Since my teacher kicked me out a week late, there weren't a whole lot of other classes for me to go to, so I ended up going there. When I arrived, most of the students had already picked out their hats, their chef coats, so I had to just randomly pick from the bin. I was really scared and intimidated. Anyway, our chef said just grab a random hat and chef jacket, which I did. When she was instructing us on how to make chocolate chip cookies, I stuck my hands inside the pockets and I felt something. When I pulled my hand out, I had found a gigantic wad of money. It wasn't no tiny wad. No, it wasn't just ones. I want to get on my teacher's good side. I was the youngest student. Going up to her and I was like, hey, I found this gigantic wad of money in one of the pockets. I showed her the wad and she dead serious looked at me like this. She took it from me and it was the shadiest thing ever. In return, she said, this is part 2 of why you should always check your pocket story. So I gave my teacher the gigantic wad of money. When I first found the money, my thoughts were, of course, I'm rich! That lasted 0.3 seconds before I was like, I need to give this to the teacher. Which I did, and again, her response was super, super weird. She kind of just took it from me and was like, and I was like, it was like a super awkward moment. And I was like, dang, I already got off on the wrong foot. Like, I left and I was like, oh, let me just do my work. Later on in the day, she came back to me and she was like, thank you so much for giving me the money. That was actually from a fundraiser that we did. And I was like, And just to say thank you, I'd like you to take 3 cookies if you want. You can take 3 cookies.
So when I was in the 5th grade, I used to get picked on all the time. I was the new kid in school, I was a very awkward child, and honestly, I was quite a little ugly duckling. When my brother took me to the mall one day to go shopping, and I begged him to get me this t-shirt that I found that said, too hot to handle, and it had these little graphic flames on it. And I loved that shirt so much, and I was so excited to wear it to school. So the next day I wore it. And the meanest, and for some reason the most popular girl in our class comes up to me and goes, you're not hot. And all her little friends laughed. And I went home and cried my eyes out. It hurt my feelings so bad. I'm very sensitive, right? But then I gave myself a pep talk in the mirror and I was like, you're not gonna put up with this. You're gonna say something to her tomorrow. And I hyped myself up. And then the next day I went to school and I walked up to her on the playground and I was like, I just wanna let you know that nobody even actually likes you because you're such a bitch. And all the kids were like, whoa, oh my God.